In this next demo, we're going to take a look at configuring security rules inside of Windows Server 2008, specifically for IPsec in this case. Now, the way we're going to go ahead and do that is we're going to go to Start, Administrative Tools, and then we're going to go back and revisit our Windows Firewall with Advanced Security. So we'll click on that. Now, once we click on that, you can see the console that we saw in our previous demo, so we'll assume that IPsec has been configured the way we want. So now we're going to go to configuring it the way we need it to be. So go to Connection Security Rules, and I'm going to create a new rule. So click on New Rule. It's going to ask you, okay, what type of rule do you want? And it's presumably before you got here, you've done some planning to figure out which one is ideal for you. But right now, we're just going to do server to server. Once we do server to server, we'll go through and we'll click next. And that's asking, okay, what's going to form the two endpoints? What are the IP addresses that form the two endpoints of this connection? Well, I'm just going to leave it at any IP address because I only have one system for right now, so I don't need to worry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. Next, saying authentication. When do you want authentication to occur? Well, you can take a look at these three. What's going through, this is the weakest right here. It's going to request it, but it's not required. This one is going to require for inbound connection. So if someone's dialing up this system, it's going to require authentication. But outbound, it's going to see if that connection will authenticate. If not, no big deal. We'll let it pass. And this third one says require for both directions. So we're just going to go ahead and leave it, request for right now. We'll click next. It's going to say, okay, how do you want to go through and authenticate these guys? Do you want to use a certificate? In which case I would go through and browse out to the CA that issued it so it could verify that. We're not going to worry about that. We could do a pre-shared key for ideal for testing, or we could go through and do advanced and click customize and choose the authentication method we want to go through and do in here. For right now, I'll click cancel out of this and I'll go with pre-shared key, and I'll say this is a test key. Then I'll go ahead and click next. And when is this rule actually going to take effect? Well, in this case, I'm just going to say use it for all three, but you'd have to figure out, do you want to use it when someone's on your domain, when they're traveling, when they're on their home network? When do you want them to use it? And then you could choose appropriately. Maybe you can uncheck and say, okay, I only want it on the domain, or maybe I want it in all cases, or maybe I want it only when they're traveling, so I'm going to use it only on the public profile. So you would want to plan this ahead, but for right now I'll leave it checked in for all of them. I will click next. Now it's asking you to name this connection rule, and I'll call it my connection rule, and I'll give it a description, and I'll click finish, and you can see my rule is on here. And if I browse through, I can see some of the things that I actually set on here. So for right now I actually have a rule set up. You can also see down here, if a rule isn't working the way you want it to, you can disable it anytime, in which case this is not enabled right now, so it will not be evaluated anymore when traffic moves across. I'll go ahead and re-enable it. You can see it is re-enabled. I can modify it anytime by clicking on it, doing properties, and taking a look to see what I need to change. Right now I'm not going to change anything on here. This is just fine the way it is. So I'll say everything looks good. I'll click cancel, and I am back to my profile, back to my connection security rule. Now at this point we have a working connection security rule, and we can configure additional ones to support additional functionality depending on what we need.